This is Venom from We Have Landed Entertainment, and welcome to my New World review slash general BS video. A couple of housekeeping things. First off, my new video card should be here in the next day or two, so we should have some more videos and live streams going on soon. And second, there is every possibility that during this video I'm going to get attacked by my wife. Long story short, she is stuck downstairs on the phone at work, and I stole her peanut butter from her, so she may come for vengeance at any moment. If that happens, I'll be fine, more likely. Anyway, so back to the main point of the video. New World. I promised this was coming, and I'm going to give you guys that's kind of my 2 cents, my overall impressions of the video. First and foremost, if you haven't heard, New World was originally going to be released on August 31st. It has been delayed. I found this out today. First, I'm going to go ahead and read the note from the publisher here. This actually was posted on August 4th, and this is a message from the New World team. It says, "We are humbled by the support New World received from players around the world throughout the closed beta. During beta, more than 1 million adventurers entered, I can't say the name of the place, Arcanum. You know what? They entered the game. Thanks to your support, New World became one of the most watched games on Twitch and one of the most played games on Steam." This is true. The passion and enthusiasm you've shown for New World validates the work we put in over the past year, improving the game based on your feedback. Along the way, you've also given us a ton of feedback that we use to make New World even better. We want New World's launch to be a smooth and fun experience for all players, and that means making some improvements based on what you encountered during closed beta. So we're going to take a few extra weeks to smash bugs, improve stability, and polish the game. New World's new global launch date is September 28, 2021. This was not an easy decision to make. We know this isn't the first time we've changed our launch date in pursuit of quality, and that can be disappointing to wait a bit longer. But we want to be sure we deliver you the highest quality game possible at launch. Thank you for your support and feedback. We're listening. We'll see you in Eternum. I'm going to learn how to say that damn place's name correctly. So before we even get into the gameplay on this delay, New World's been delayed several times over the years, and to be honest, this newest one is not really unexpected. There were quite a few bugs during the actual beta that I played, mostly with stability issues. There were definitely a few buggy issues with like movement, not being able to whirl when you should be able to, some animations being a bit wonky. Things that should be fairly minor bug fixes, but the stability one was a big one. I was only actually able to play about half the time because the servers kept shutting down or kept getting really unstable. So that didn't really shock me so much. It doesn't quite bug me so much that they're extending the deadline. I'd be a little bit more wary if they didn't push it back after all the bugs. We don't want to see what happened with some of the... we see it every time a new game launches. If they have a beta, take Fallout 76, probably was the biggest one. They had the beta, they got all the feedback on these bug fixes, but they didn't push the game back, or at least not far enough. There was no way they could fix all the bugs in time. The game, I don't think actually pushing it back by a month or two would have helped Fallout 76, but I think New World, I think these developers are going to be able to at least get a lot more of these bugs ironed out and fixed. I'm curious to see what happens with that. So I'm not necessarily worried about this pushback. Again, it sucks when a game's launch gets pushed back and you can't play it when you expect it to. It's been pushed back by a month. It is what it is. Now, hopefully it's in a situation to where the game really needs a couple more years of development, but I don't think we have a CD Projekt Red Cyberpunk 2077 situation going on here. So, again, that's all on the launch day delay. Past that, let's go ahead and get into the actual gameplay. Now, gameplay-wise, Elder Scrolls Online meets Outriders. You choose your weapon, you level up that weapon's skills, and then later on you unlock a second weapon. You can use up to 3 skills per bar, and you kind of bounce back and forth between there. There's not that many skills in each skill tree. There's typically 3 main skills in each skill tree, and you build off of that. And each weapon's got 2 different skill trees, kind of a defensive and then a more offensive skill tree. Some of them are a little bit weirder than that, but for the most part, that's how it works. And to be honest, New World was very MMO standard. It didn't feel bad at all. I did enjoy it, but it's got all the things you would expect an MMO to have in there. It had adventuring, it had crafting, it had some PvP. There wasn't anything in there to really make it stand out besides the fact that it's new, but the things that it didn't do too bad. Really, if you just imagine any MMO you played, then you really imagine New World. I think really to help describe the game or what it was like playing it, I'm just going to kind of describe the biggest changes or the biggest things that I noticed stood out versus playing any other real basic MMO. And the first one is going to be the crafting and gathering system. I can tell you right now, during my gameplay and during the game's life, crafting is going to be a huge part of the game. One thing about the game is that there are no real stores. The only stores are the auction houses that are in each city. And instead of selling all your junk and used items to a NPC vendor, you actually just break them down and then reuse the parts you get, like the iron ore you get, or iron ingots, or the wood. So there's no real, that took a little getting used to. One of the most common things you'd see new players when they were coming in was, besides where you would find a certain item as far as gathering, was where do you sell all your junk at? Where you don't, you just vendor it. Or if you get, say, extra gear from, say, a dungeon you do, you put it on the auction house in the city. So that's one thing to kind of get used to, is that crafting and really just selling stuff in the auction house are really going to be the main ways of getting rid of gear. I mean, salvaging really is the only way to do it. You get gold really by questing, and I mean, you're not really going to be selling a whole lot of items unless there's two other players. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. And there weren't really any junk items in the game either. And by junk items, I mean literally items that fall off of monsters that are junk or marked as vendor trash. There's no vendor trash items like that. It's all items you can break down, and because of that, there's really not a problem not having an NPC vendor for the most part. Think about any MMO you've played to end game, and think about how often you really use like the basic NPC vendors. I mean, the last one that I can really think that I played was Elder Scrolls Online, and besides getting rid of actual vendor trash or vendor marked trash that came from mobs, I really had no point in going to any NPC vendor. I would either make my own gear, or it would be gear that dropped in, say, dungeons or the raid. So that's not going to be an issue here. Now keep in mind there are actual NPC vendors, but they're faction vendors. It's basically your reward vendors. So keep that in mind, there's no real stores in game. Everything you buy is going to be from other players, either through trade or through the auction houses. And from what I can see, the auction houses in the town are going to play a really big part in the economy. Even though it was just a beta, you could still trade with other players, and I didn't really see a whole lot of trading going on as far as between players. I really saw it all go through the auction houses. So maybe there was just areas where I wasn't going to, where people were kind of standing around like old school RuneScape, you know, hey, selling wood for this much or whatnot. You don't really see that too much. Everything was going to the auction houses. People would kind of bid each other down. Finally, prices were kind of level out, and that's how items were being sold. So, I mean, pretty standard MMO fare. So just keep that in mind. I mean, there's nothing unusual about that. Now, I will say, using the auction house was a bit of a pain in the butt. But that was because the servers were really unstable, and it was kind of hard to search by certain criteria until you got used to it. Really, the instability was a problem, and again, it was a beta. They were testing for that, so it is what it is for that. Hopefully that's fixed, and then when the game launches, searching won't be such a problem. Now, speaking of crafting and selling things, one thing that it did kind of take some getting used to is going to be the crafting system as well. I'm not going to go too deep into the crafting and the gathering system right now, but like I said, one is going to be huge, and two, you got to really pay attention to what you're doing when you're crafting. I mean, you have your basic stuff like cooking, you've got forging, you've got stuff like leather work or making jewelry or magic items. You've got to actually pay attention to what you're crafting. You can't just go in and try to power level your crafting, because you're going to end up wasting a lot of resources. I say that because New World has a system where you can actually downgrade your crafting items. So let's say you had a really high, ore, like orichalcum. You can actually use other items to downgrade that to lower items, all the way down to, say, gold, silver, or iron, or something like that. You can actually downgrade high quality items to lower grade ones to help you craft lower grade items. So let's say I spent my entire time just mining ore, and I became a master ore smelter, but then I couldn't actually make any items from it because, I need lower level items. I need like iron, the basics, but I've only got this high level mining stuff. You can break those high level items down to help you level up your lower level skills. So that was kind of cool. Just keep in mind, for you power levelers out there, if you're going to go through and start making every single item you can and you're not paying attention, you may inadvertently downgrade some of your rare materials to more common materials. So kind of keep that in mind. Now, as far as your gathering skill goes, for the most part, your gathering skill will just let you gather up higher level items for whatever category you're in, either mining for obviously things like ores or woodcutting for chopping down wood. And while those skills will allow you to obtain certain items, there are certain items you just obtain more of as your skill grows higher. There are certain magic items you would combine to make magical gear, where you may gather some out of a plant at a low level, but then you can actually mine something at a higher level that gives you exponentially more of that certain item. I know that may not make a lot of sense, but put it this way. The higher your gathering skill, the better resource nodes you can actually obtain items from. That's how it works. And some of these resources can actually be gathered across the span of different gathering skills. I.e., you can gather one resource from plants at a low level, but then at a much higher level, you can actually mine that resource out of a high level ore node. And finally, while we're on the subject of crafting, one of the reasons I'm harping on crafting and gathering so much is because many of the side quests, in fact, most of the ones that I saw, actually involved, especially the town projects, involved having to craft certain items or gather up certain items and turn them in. So not only is crafting going to be important for yourself, but I mean, that's going to be just a huge portion of what the quests are. So this is definitely going to be a game where really you're going to live and die by your crafting skill. And as far as gathering, the only other thing I can say about gathering, each gathering skill has actually got a level where you can actually find that item on the map. So let's say you're looking for a hemp to make fiber. At a certain level, once you've gathered enough hemp or gathered enough items, you can actually find that item on your compass when you're looking at it. The problem with that, and hopefully they fix this, is that when you can actually see these items on the map, by the time they would show up on the compass, they're already in your view. I think the actual worst case of this was iron. I got my mining skill up in the game high enough to actually see iron on the compass. The problem was that it's such a short distance that literally by the time you can see iron on the compass, you are literally like maybe 5 steps away from it. You will actually see the iron in front of you before it shows up on the map. That's actually kind of useless. Hopefully they fix that to make it a much bigger distance. Otherwise, it's really going to be kind of a useless skill. And it was different lengths for different items. I mean, I could see hemp from much further away. I could see animals from very far away, but for some reason, iron and other things you can mine up, they were like a fraction of the distance you could see as other items. I'm hoping it's a glitch. I definitely wasn't the only person that complained about this, but we'll see how that goes. Now, speaking of compass, that kind of brings us to the map, a roundabout way, but it does. The map, for the most part, works just fine. And we're going to talk about traveling here in a little bit, but again, for the most part, the map works fine. It does what it's supposed to do. I'd say the only real issues are there's no really mini-map on the game. Granted, there's a compass, yes, but some people feel a little bit better having a mini-map. I'm one of them. But if need be, I can also just survive without one. The only other nitpick I've got about the map is there is actually a kind of a table on the left side that shows where certain resources can be found. Hemp, iron, those sorts of things. It kind of gives an area where they can be found at. The problem is it only lists like a few of the items that are findable. I mean, it doesn't list any of the magic items. It lists only, as far as I can remember, only iron for ore. And even after I found things that weren't listed on the map and I had the ability to gather them, the map didn't really list, where to look at for these things. So really it's an incomplete table of where to find resources. Personally, if I were to fix that, I'd say either A, once you find a resource in a certain area, add it to the map. B, as you level up and kind of can mine those resources or find them, add those to the mini-map. No, I'm sorry, not the mini-map, but add those to the table. Or C, get rid of the table to begin with. I mean, it's great having it there, but it's only going to be useful for maybe, your first, couple days of playing, and after that, you found all the stuff. What's the point of having that there still? So that's just my 2 cents. Like I said, the map works. It is what it is. It's just a map. It's kind of hard to go wrong there. But I do want to go ahead and get into fast traveling in the game. Now, for traveling, New World has no mounts. If anyone's telling you there's mounts, they're lying. Okay, I saw plenty of people get duped in game. I saw people asking, where do you get mounts at? How do you run? How do you fast travel? There is fast travel in the game, but it takes a specific currency that you get, for the most part, just by doing quests. You can hold 1,000 of it. Depending on where you're going, it can cost a different amount. There were some places I would go, it cost over 100. There were some places I went where it cost in the teens. Just do your quest. You're going to get plenty of that currency. I ran out of room for it. And I was literally, like, I would get some and I couldn't hold it anymore. That's how much I had. And I did quite a bit of fast traveling. I'm pretty lazy. But again, no mounts. I don't understand the purpose of no mounts. I can understand not being able to fast travel easily. Actually, sorry. Now that I say that, I actually had to pause when I was recording there for a little bit because this doesn't actually make sense to me. And this actually gives me vibes, and here's where I kind of have a bit of a rant about New World. This kind of gives me the same vibes I got in Fallout 76 where they said there'd be no human NPCs. This is hardly the same situation, but I'm getting the same vibe from New World as far as fast traveling goes. I mean, there is fast traveling. You can register at inns and towns. I mean, there's I don't know, like 10 towns or something. But when you go to a town, you can register at the inn, and you can recall there every hour for free. So you recall there, you fast travel there, you're good to go. And you can do it from anywhere. As far as fast traveling anywhere else, you can fast travel to places you've been or certain shrines, but it costs a currency. The problem I had was that I filled up on that currency by the time I hit like level 10, and I was fast traveling quite a bit. And then all the currency I got after that was wasted. There was no way to save it. But I would still fast travel, but I was constantly full on it. My question is this A going to be one of those things to where it's almost like a premium currency in a mobile game where you think you have a lot of it until you hit the end game and then bam, it's all gone, you run through it in like a minute? Or is this seriously a situation to where unless you're just literally trying to waste all the fast travel currency, that you're always going to be full on it? Because if that's the case, why have the currency for it at all? And if this is a situation to where you're just not going to have a lot of this currency at the end game, and that's kind of a dick move. That's something you'd see in like a pay-to-win game. But this isn't a game where you can buy that currency, so I'm a little confused on the whole fast travel thing and the restrictions that are placed on it. I get having certain fast travel points, that's fine. But I mean, that's again standard for pretty much any game. You usually can't just fast travel any place you want to. There's usually certain points you got to go to, like landmarks or shrines or temples, and you have to unlock them one way or another. It's the same way in New World, but the restrictions on it are just so odd. Again, it's not terrible, but it's a bit confusing, and it seems almost like they put more thought into it than they needed to, or not enough thought. And the other half of that is mounts. There's no mounts in the game, and there's no run button. I mean, you can technically bind run and walk, but there's no real sprinting in the game. Like once you're moving by default, I was playing on mouse and keyboard. Once I was moving, I was automatically moving at the fastest speed I could be. So I mean, there was nowhere running. Like I can't tell you how many times I went to go hit shift thinking I was going to run, and just out of force of habit from other games, and I would just roll and then start running. I mean, you're already running. That's kind of weird. Having some kind of sprint in the game might be nice, just a little extra oomph. I mean, mentally that helps a lot too. But this is also one where I'm kind of confused why there's no mounts. And this is one where I've got the sneaking suspicion there's going to be mounts added in later on. And I bet the way they do it is probably going to be like a quest to get your first mount or something. And then, bam, there's more mounts in the cash shop. That's how it usually happens. I bet anything right now that that's exactly what's going to happen later on in this game's life, in the lifespan of this game. Now again, this was kind of a left field rant. I really hadn't planned on doing that. I was just going to talk about the map and then talk about how I thought it was a dumb idea not having mounts and there was no running. But yeah, really just the whole fast travel thing, it confuses me. But hey, it is what it is. I mean, as long as we can stay full on that currency, great. Then I guess it's really not going to matter. But again, if it becomes a problem in the end game, then it's going to be a problem. And make no mistake, if you've got to run across the map to get someplace, it can take a while to get there. It's not like you can just run straight across. There are mountains and valleys and rivers in this game that you have to traverse. And if you haven't been to a place, I mean, getting there the first time, yeah, it's supposed to be an adventure. But if you really need to get someplace and it's emergency for some reason in the game and you don't have the currency because you've run out, yeah, it could end up being a problem later on down the line in the game. But like I said, right now, I don't think it's going to be an issue. So we've already talked about crafting and gathering a bit. We've talked about the map and kind of fast traveling and the fact that there's no mounts. Next, let's get into the big thing, combat. Now again, there's no classes in New World. You choose your weapon, you get 3 skills you can put on that weapon bar. At a certain level, you unlock a second weapon bar, you make your builds from there. Pretty simple. Each weapon has got two sides to it, a left side and a right side as far as your skill trees. One side tends to be more defensive, one side tends to be more offensive. It's got some pretty decent option. Each weapon has got 6 skills you can do for the most part, 3 offensive, 3 defensive. It varies depending on what weapon you're using. And again, that's how you make your builds. I personally use the Ice Gauntlet and the Rapier when I was playing. They're both intelligence builds. I liked it quite a bit. I had some pretty decent DPS in there. I had decent survivability for the most part, and that's where I'm going to get to this next part. Now, keep in mind, while there may not be set classes, there are still kind of set roles in New World. I mean, most MMOs, you're still going to have your tank, you're going to have your healer, you're going to have your DPSs, depending on, what the game is. I mean, back in Star Wars, back in the old day, 2 DPS, a healer, and your tank. But most games, it just depends on how big your group is. You tend to have 1 to 2 tanks, you have your healer, you have your DPS fill up the rest of the spots, and you go from there. This game is pretty similar, but when you're playing by yourself, there were a few issues that popped up for me. One was the spawn rate of enemies. I swear, when it comes to quest enemies, they took forever to spawn. I sat in one spot for 20 minutes waiting for an enemy to spawn once, and unfortunately it was one that apparently a lot of other people needed, so it was a quest boss, it was one in the open world. And I think we've all been there at one point or another, where everyone's standing around waiting to get a hit on this boss, and only like 2 people get to kill the thing and get the quest because everyone's hitting it at once, but you have to hit it so many times and do so much damage, and unless you do it, you got to do it again and wait another 20 minutes. This happened, I was there for like an hour trying to get this Forge boss. It was annoying, and there was only like 8 people there. I hate to think of what those look like on day one. Because keep in mind, I started playing a couple weeks into the New World beta. On the other side of that, just random NPC enemies that spawn out in the world, I swear they spawn way too often. I cannot tell you how many times I killed a group of enemies, was literally in the middle of mining a node or chopping down a tree, and suddenly there's 10 more enemies on top of me that I literally watched spawn that I just killed. That happened quite a bit. I mean, gathering was a bit of a pain around enemies like that. Another problem I had was the pass parades. At least on 4 or 5 different occasions, and I can remember this one very clearly. I was on top of a pyramid. I was fighting these 2, not quite mini bosses, but they were like the 1-star guys that were up there. Not quite a mini boss, but pretty difficult characters. And in comes another character, another player running past me. He's got like 4 or 5 NPCs running him. As soon as they get to me, they're aggroed on him. As soon as they see me, they all swarm onto me. I don't know what it is about the aggro in this game, but I swear on at least 4 different occasions, I had a whole crap ton of mobs just out of nowhere swarming. Like you're getting one spot, you're completely cleared out, and you will literally turn around and there'll be like, it's like playing the worst zombie survival game ever, where they literally just spawn before. It's like playing freaking Cyberpunk 2077. You'll be in an area with nothing around you, then you kill a civilian and the cops spawn right behind you. That's exactly what it was like. It was a pain in the butt. And as far as actual combat goes, for the most part, it's like traditional. Well, no, I'm not going to say that either. It's a combination of almost, I don't want to say Dark Souls combat because it's not really. I'd say it's more like Outriders combat. I mean, you can dodge around, you can block, you can parry. None of that really matters when you've got 30 enemies swarming on top of you, hitting you at once. One-on-one combat is fine. Boss fights, it's cool. But it doesn't really work when you can't stun 12 enemies that are attacking you at the same time. Now, I say classes. When I say classes, I'm talking about weapons or your actual builds. Now, some classes can handle that thing better than others. I was using an Ice Gauntlet for the most part, so I was able to do a lot of CC damage and then kind of block through until they all died. But, I mean, there's not much you can do when you're trying to parry what's in front of you and there's 3 guys behind you. And don't get me wrong, it's not like a get good Dark Souls type combat. You get 2 rolls and you're out of stamina, period. And these enemies move faster than you can. So there's not a whole lot you can do if you are getting swarmed and you're not the right build. In fact, quite a bit of combat just felt like mash the attack button, use your skills when they pop up, and that's it. It is a weird mix of real-time versus MMO combat. Again, it wasn't bad, but it definitely needs a little bit more polish for what it's supposed to be doing. And like I said, I didn't mess with PvP combat at all. I definitely saw some talks about what the meta builds for PvP were going to be, but like I said, I didn't touch PvP. I was enjoying myself with PvE, getting a good feel for the systems. Past that, I would say I felt a bit weak as a healer. I did switch over to doing the healing staff for a while. Again, we were able to respec pretty regularly and cheaply before level 20. I did play as a healer for a bit. I tried some dungeons around 25 or so as a healer. Even spec'd for it, I felt a bit weak. I didn't feel like I was healing that much. It still felt like it was more on the players to heal themselves. I mean, I could definitely tell I was helping, but you don't feel quite as powerful as a healer as you would in another MMO. I mean, you're healing like 1 and 2% damage. I mean, I'm exaggerating a bit. You're healing maybe 5 or 10 at a time, but it still doesn't feel like it's that much. So it's definitely needed, but it also feels like if you got a good enough team, you can probably get through a lot of the early stuff without one. Again, haven't seen what the end game looks like. I only got to like level 25 or 26 before the end of the beta, but I did that because I didn't want to do too much and burn out on it before the actual game came out. But that would be the one thing I say I felt a little weak, and that was being a healer. Again, maybe I wasn't built right for it. I sunk all my points into it during a respec and tried it. It did seem to work a bit better, but it still didn't feel quite as good as it could be. But it is what it is. I still had a pretty good time. And we got through the dungeon, so I guess I did a good enough job. I'd say the only thing, like I said, I really can't talk about is the PvP, but unfortunately it seems like PvP along with crafting are going to be huge parts of the game. And I say that because every city seems to be able to be taken over by a company. A company, think of it like a guild or like a player-created guild. A company could take over an area and then they would have wars. Again, I didn't mess with PvP at all too much, but it seemed like every hour or so each city was being taken over by somebody else. They could set the taxes to what they wanted to, so when you would craft, a certain amount of taxes would go to that. That system, I'm going to leave that to the PvP guys. I did not mess with that at all. Again, I was more worried about getting into the actual game systems that were PvE related or basically anything but PvP. I just didn't want to play the PvP portion for this. Also, I didn't really have anyone to play with as far as PvP goes. This definitely seems like a game where you'd want to do that. Again, I did not have anyone to play with. I didn't have like a dedicated group. I will be looking for one at the start of the game, so I will be getting into it. But for this beta, I kind of want to go in there kind of unguided. Just hop in like any other player would and see what was going on. And it definitely seems like you're going to want to be in a company because that's where I think a lot of the action is going to be at. But my overall impression of New World was, if I'm being honest, I mean, it was decent. It was a distraction. It honestly is kind of just another generic MMO. I mean, it's not like I think it's $40 right now. It's not bad. There's no subscription fee or anything for it. I had a good time. And again, keep in mind, I haven't gotten to endgame. So it definitely kept me engaged for the time I was playing it. I have no idea what the endgame looks like. Again, I went in there. I didn't look at any other reviews. I didn't look at what the endgame looked like for anyone else. I didn't jump into a company trying to see, what everyone else was doing or how to do this or what the meta was. I went in just kind of fresh-faced, new person. And again, I'm not someone who gets really hyped up for games for the most part that are coming out. I had seen New World. I purposely kind of didn't pay attention to it until recently. And then when the beta came out, I went ahead and hopped in it. So this is just my take on it. Generic MMO, but not bad. I had a good time playing it. So as of right now, I'm definitely, again, I've already got it. I'm going to be playing it when the game comes out, but I didn't see any really overflowing flaws or anything with the game. I mean, yes, there were bugs. There is time for them to be fixed before the game is launched. And again, I started a video saying that they did push back the launch date to September 28th, so that's good. They said it was based on feedback, and we'll see. I think there's some talk about, and I say talk, these are people in the community are winning another beta to see if we can see if that ends up happening. I don't know if it will or not. Because while I'm happy that they did push the game back to fix the bugs, we don't want to get in the habit of just doing a beta, fixing bugs, and just going over and over until they try to get the game too perfect. And then by the time the game launches, it's 2 years later and everyone's played the first 20 hours of the game like a million times. So we don't want to do that. But we do want to get the game out in a timely manner, or we would like, we get the game out. I'd like the game to come out in a timely manner to where it's still enjoyable and not overdo it on the beta. So honestly, I think if they do one more beta, as long as it comes out on the 28th, even if it gets pushed back one more time, I'd say we're probably good if they're doing legitimate fixes. As long as it's not a situation where they say they're fixing things and the game launches and none of the fixes were made, or all they did was like render 2 additional shadows or something crazy like that, that'd be a bad situation. But I think right now we're looking at a good spot. So again, overall, the game was fun. I will be playing it, and I hope to see you guys there as well. Again, I didn't talk about the story too much at all. The story does seem interesting, but I'm not going to spoil anything for it. I mean, with an MMO, a lot of times the story, and it only lasts for so long. And then it's just really kind of a gear chase and doing in-game missions. So I really didn't want to ruin any part of the story for that. Plus, I mean, come on, I'm lazy. But seriously, the game was fun. I'll see you all when the game comes out. If you're playing, again, I would recommend it. I'm not saying it's going to be the great big MMO of the next 10 years or anything like that. Again, who knows what happens down the line. The game's just starting off, but we'll see. I enjoyed it. I'll see you guys all when the game comes out. And past that, that's just been my take on New World. Again, last couple housekeeping things. My video guard should be in the next couple days. I'll be off for a couple days getting my new computer set up and getting things set up for streaming again. After that, I don't know what I'm going to start streaming first. It may end up being Ark, and maybe something. Actually, there's a game that just came out. Oh, it's going to be a surprise to you guys. There's a game that just came out based off of a. Well, you know what? I'm not going to spoil it. You guys are going to love it though. So, thank y'all for coming by, and I will see you all later.